Alright, so we began Siman Pei Tes in Halacha Basar בחלב. This is the Siman that discusses Shelo lechol gvina achar basar, not to eat after meat, not to eat milk products after meat, immediately after. And as we will see today, also not to eat, perhaps according to some opinions, meat after milk products right away. There are various shittas concerning that. From the Gemara, it appears to be that the main chumrah, that the main issues were more concerning eating milk products after meat. It appears to be very easy, much easier, when dealing with eating meat products after milk. So we began to discuss the sugya as to what the issue is, what are the problems. It's not so apparent from the Gemara, even though the Gemara brings down this idea of not eating meat supposedly right away or sometime after milk, that there should be some hamtana, there should be some waiting period. We don't really know in hours what that waiting period really is, from the Gemara, that is. All we see is word about not in the same meal. One would wait to the next day, one would wait to the next meal, but would not have it in the same meal. It doesn't appear to be that there's even an isser, of course. Of course there's no isser, because we know basar b'chalav is only a problem if you cook them together. So here, there appears to be more of a harchaka of some sort. In other words, let's keep them apart. Let's not have them in the same meal. Can I have them right away, the next meal? Perhaps. It's not very clear, not very apparent as to how much I have to wait.
Now, how much you have to wait would be the Rabbanan anyway.
Yes, it would be a Rabbana.
So, what is this Rabbanan?
We'll first have to see what the issues are.
Okay.
So we spoke about the issues as presented to us by Rashi. Rashi is the first one commenting on the Gemara that tells us, listen, it has to do with the fact that when you have meat, you have the ta'am habasar, shenimshach, you have the flavoring of the meat that continues to remain there for a while in the mouth. And of course, he's talking about having swallowed. It's the act of swallowing, the act of eating meat, that somehow it's not so much the meat in one's stomach, in one's system, it's just having had the meat continues to give off a flavor, to emit a flavor in the mouth. And of course, you don't want to have cheese or milk while there's still this flavor of meat in the mouth. Okay. Rambam says it appears to be more of a harchaka because of basar bin hashinaim, meat that may still be around in the teeth. Well, pieces of meat. You don't want to have dairy in your mouth when you have pieces of meat possibly still there. So the Rambam says after 6 hours, after a good amount of time, that meat would already have become digested and not qualified to being meat yet anymore, and it wouldn't pose a problem. If you look at Tosfot says doesn't seem to be having any of this problem, not what Rashi says and not what the Rambam says. Tosfot says, it's only a harchaka. Obviously there's a harchaka here. The Gemara is clear about that we don't want to have them very close together. But, if you just clean yourself up, that should be sufficient. There doesn't seem to be any other problem than that. In other words, the harchaka is you shouldn't come to eat basar b'chalav together. In other words, other than that, there's not a problem of flavor or basar bin hashinaim.
Does Rashi give a time? You said the Rambam used 6 to give a time?
No. Right. Now, Tosfot, let me just double check on that. Yeah, I don't recall. No, I don't think so. Because actually, not everybody gives time. That's what's interesting. Everybody understands that there is a need for a harchaka, but the amount of time is already something that we will discuss, where that comes from. And one of those sources is, of course, that our meaning is from the Rambam, the 6 hours. But what's interesting about Tosfot is that in not giving a real explanation, in just telling us that it's a harchaka, so you shouldn't come to eat basar b'chalav, there's a tzorach iyun here. We have a good question to ask. what should be then the difference? Why should there be a difference between not having milk after meat and not having meat after milk? According to his reason. If it's not because of what you've just eaten, like the Rambam explains or the Rashi explains, if it's just a harchaka that you should not come to eat two together, then why should it make a difference if you had meat first and then milk, or if you have milk and then you have meat? That's a good question. That would be a tzorech hiyun to ask on Tosfos Shita. According to Rabbeinu Tam, which is another opinion brought down, obviously there would be some difference because he holds that at the very least you need kinuach and netila. You have to wash your hands, you have to rinse your mouth. Well, that would apply after you've had meat. After you've had meat, it makes sense that you want to rinse your mouth. Actually, you could say that after cheese too, but it may make more sense that you may need that more after you've just had meat. Okay, because maybe meat remains there more, there's pieces left. Maybe it's a combination of Rashi and the Rambam, that because of the way meat is, you need to rinse your mouth. After having cheese, you don't really need it. You don't really need it. But we will talk about that later on, when you do. So, according to Tosfot, it's a little difficult to understand what would be the difference in the order. Because I remember, as we said, it has nothing to do with being in the stomach, in the system at the same time. It's, as Rashi says, only after you've eaten the meat, it's a problem. Because of the tam, which is not necessarily the case where you have first the cheese. Or according to the Rambam, you've had the meat, and that's the Basar ben Hashinayim. We said that the two shitas may have some differences in certain scenarios. What if you've had shuman, you just had chicken soup, you've had fat, so you didn't have Basar ben Hashinayim, so according to Rashi you would have to wait. According to the Rambam, maybe you wouldn't have to wait because you don't have the meat. But on the other hand, lo'es, you chew, and you didn't swallow, that may be more of an issue for the Rambam, chewing the meat to soften it for the baby, for the child, versus the Rashi might say, well, you didn't really swallow it, you didn't really have it, you didn't eat it, it wouldn't present so much of a problem of the time being nimshach, of going on for a while. How does Tosfot understand, really, or how does Rabbeinu Tam, how do they understand the Gemara, Mar Ukva, being machmir, in waiting for the next Seudah? It could be, one way that we understand Mar Ukva waiting for the next Seudah is that next Seudah does not necessarily mean I wait from breakfast to dinner. Because that's the way the Rambam is interpreting it, that really the next Seudah represents not only the time that is sufficient to digest the meat in the teeth, but also that's what Mar Ukva, that's what the Gemara is pointing out, that you've had meat in one meal, don't have dairy until the next meal. Well, when is your next meal? 6 hours later. Tosfos says not necessarily. The way he understands it is that the next meal could be right away. It doesn't have to be that I have to wait the number of hours that I ordinarily wait for my next meal. Just as long as I washed my hands, according to Rabbeinu Tam, as long as I finish with this meal, I'm not having it in the same meal, right? Some would say you would be able to have it in the same meal too, as long as you washed your hands. Rabbeinu Tam would say that there would be no heck, but why? Because even what Mar Ukva did was a chumrah for himself. It wasn't halacha l'maisa. So yes, you're right. The Gemara says that you would wait for the next meal. But does that mean that everybody has to wait for the next meal? What if you want to have it now? As long as you're clean, it should be sufficient. That's the way Rabbeinu Tam really holds. So from Tosfot, however you look at Tosfot, there's no indication whatsoever of a time, of a real time that you need to wait between having eaten basar and now when you want to have chalav. It's only the shita of the Rambam, if we look at Rishonim that is, and of course Rashi, that appear to say that no, we need to wait a certain amount of time. That amount of time is not so clear. It's the next meal. Okay. If that's the case, that it's the next meal, other than the Rambam, the Pri Chodesh says that the 6 hours stems from the fact that that's the normal hafsaka between meal and the next meal. The Rambam is adding the detail that, or that's the way we understand the Rambam, that it's necessary to digest the meat. That's as long as it takes. So theoretically, any meat that is found after 6 hours is not meat. You would still rinse your mouth, but it's not meat. If it's still there, it's gone. So the Pri Chodesh seems to be saying that those 6 hours that the majority of the world today holds by the way, is because that's the basic understanding of the sugya itself, that you wait till the next seudah. That the next seudah does not mean literally, well, I want to have a snack, I want to have another meal right away. The next seudah really means, when do you have your next meal? 6 hours later. Okay, so that's the Pri Chodesh. Now, based on that, he wants to add that in the winter, that the days are shorter. 6 hours would not necessarily have to be 6 hours. We would resort to sha'ot zmaniyot. How would you say sha'ot zmaniyot?
Seasonal.
Seasonal hours, thank you. And that could be less or more. I mean, in winter it would be, you have a shorter day. So therefore, you wouldn't really have to wait 6 hours, according to the Pri Chodesh. Yes, if that's the way people have their meals. Yes.
You have to have the meal, or it's just...
No, well, it would ultimately influence the amount of time one waits between a meal and a meal. Because if the day is shorter, you're going to have breakfast and dinner closer to each other. So
now, 6 hours were a standardized from meal to meal.
Yes, according to the way
Now,
it is
6
explained.
hours now ends up being really what, in terms of has a meal within 20 minutes of each other.
No. No, that would be too much. Obviously what the Pri Chodesh is referring to is, it doesn't have to be 6 hours, it could be 5 hours and 15 minutes. So 6 hours, don't take it to mean literally 6 hours. It's just, like you were saying, a standardization based on what meals are, the way the meals are distributed over a normal day. But once the seasons change, in the winter the days are shorter, it doesn't have to be 6 hours. That's what the Pri Chodesh, the Crazy Placey, says no. That the main idea behind, the way he learns it, the main idea behind the 6 hours is not so much the time difference between the meals. It also is, like the Rambam said, it has also to do, at least, the Basar ben Hashinayim issue. If that's the case, it's always 6 hours regardless of the season. There's no difference winter and summer, according to
It depends how long it takes for the meat to turn into both.
Yeah. But it's brought down in the name of the Rav, the Brisker Rav, that he used to suggest to wait 5 hours plus the majority of the 6th hour. It doesn't have to be 6 hours precise. Why? I think, I didn't see it inside, but I think he's taking it from the Rambam. If you look at the Lashon of the Rambam, it says, I believe, tzarich lamtin kemo 6 shaot. Kemo. Approximately 6 hours. Doesn't necessarily have to be exactly 6 hours. Okay. So that's where you have this additional minhag of the brisk. In other words, the brisk custom, I don't know if they all follow that, is, it doesn't have to be 6 hours, it could be 5.5, it could be 5 hours and 40 minutes, whatever it is that it doesn't have to be completely. All right. Next minhag, yekes. The yekes wait 3 hours. Now, who are the yekes? The yekes are those that lived in Germany or northeast France. And I'm told, I saw somewhere that I think that even in Algeria they had this minhag, waiting only 3 hours. Why? This minhag stems from, what's interesting is that this minhag actually stems from the fact that during the winter, meals were about 3 hours apart.
Okay, so there is actually a basis for it.
Yeah, there's a basis for it, sure. Based on this, that 3 hours was understood to be enough for the tam. I mean, remember, we're taking Rashi's interpretation into consideration. So 3 hours was considered enough for the tam to go away from the mouth. Then they didn't distinguish between summer and winter. So in other words, once you allowed 3 hours, because that is what sometimes the difference between one suda and another suda is, and you say that is sufficient for the time to go away, in other words, that is enough, then they did not make a difference between summer and winter. Once they allowed the 3 hours, they allowed it across the board. So that's where you have the minhag of 3 hours. The Pri Chodesh brings that, I don't know if he held by it, but he also brings a minhag of 4 hours. And the 4 hours, I think, is a shita that the Chassam Sofer also subscribes to. Yeah. Anyway, if we read the Ramah, we will see that he brings a shita of 1 hour. Even though in the end he says, we're machmir to wait 6, and basically the majority of the world today is machmir to wait 6. So even though there are all these shitas, the majority of the world waits 6 hours. So what's the basis of 1? Oh, everybody is puzzled by this. Where did this 1 hour come from? I mean, if you want to hold like Tosfos, I mean, that you don't really need anything, okay, so say so. But what's this 1 hour? So the Vilna Gaon brings down, quoting the Beis Yosef, of course, the Beis Yosef quotes a Zohar. We recently read in the Parsha that there are terrible negative consequences for eating basar b'chalav in the same meal, together. It goes through all these kinds of negative consequences to one's children if one conceives a child during that time. All kinds of problems that this causes him for having done something like that. On a Kabbalistic level, it's terrible. Okay? Terrible. Obviously, what's interesting about the Zohar is that people don't understand that basar b'chalav in itself is a chok. It's a decree. It's not a logical commandment. It has nothing to do with health reasons either. Why can't I cook meat and milk together? As we explained, it's something more spiritual. And therefore, not eating them together apparently also fits that criteria. Even though we're not transgressing a prohibition from the Torah, obviously there is a need to separate the two. So the Vilna Gaon wants to say that that hour comes from that Zohar that emphasizes not to have them in the same hour, not to have them in the same meal, the same time, the same hour. That's how, more or less, this is the words of Zohar.
Do you happen to read that appears?
Yeah, I think 2 parshas ago. Either one or two parshas ago in the Zohar. Now we're parshas Truma? Yeah, a couple parshas ago. Beis Yosef brings it down here. He said, Beis Yosef actually quotes that Zohar. But I remember learning that Zohar when I was learning the Choik in the morning, that we were learning it together. So what's interesting about the Zohar, so the Vilna Gaon says it's very simple, but there he quotes the language of not having it at the same time, in the same hour. Oh, so an hour later, it's okay. So at the very least, let's wait at the very least 1 hour to avoid this chas v'shalom negative consequence. So at the very least, 1 hour. So we're machmir. Now, what's interesting is that I saw Shar Tshuva brings down the Chacham Tzvi, who says in the name of the Radvaz, that whenever there's no psak halacha in the Gemara or in the Poskim that's contrary to the Kabbalah, we follow the Kabbalah. That's a very known idea, by the way. Even though they're saying this, I don't know if they're the makor of this, if the Radvaz is the makor for this, it could be it is. But that's I remember that from other situations, because there are various times when you learn Shulchan Aruch and you will see that the Kabbalah says something else. That is why you even have a Shulchan Aruch Ha'ari. You know, there's a whole Shulchan of how certain things, and the Ben Ish Chai actually has certain halachas that are different than the Bechai, even though he was a Sephardi, because he followed the Kabbalah, the Kabbalistic teaching. So here we have a klal, that even for regular Ashkenazim who don't always learn and follow Kabbalah, that if there are no poskim, or if the Gemara does not beferish give a psak halacha on something which is contrary to the Kabbalah, we follow the Kabbalah. So here, there is no psak, there is no halacha that's contrary to the Kabbalah in the Gemara in the poskim. So you can follow the Kabbalah, of waiting at the very least 1 hour. Why not? Follow it. Be safe. Right?
At the minimum.
At the minimum, right, at the minimum.
But today we don't.
Right. But we will see when, by what, very good point. What do you mean? We don't have, we do a little bit. What if somebody is sick and he just had meat, can they have milk? Medication or whatever. We wouldn't be machmir with a choila. We would tell him, can you wait an hour?
Now add to that the Chabad whole generations.
The what?
Chabad.
Holds?
In the committee halachot.
Yeah.
In the Dalagal.
Really? I didn't know that. I didn't hear that.
Because of
Yore Deah Dorot?
Yeah.
I didn't know. I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't know about that. But anyway, somebody sick would be able to use this heter, this leniency of waiting for an hour. Yes.
But if there's no psak, there's no halacha.
But there isn't the Kabbalah.
And there isn't no Kabbalah.
Right.
And if that's
Right. Sure.
then the whole world should be following. That should not be a minority opinion. That should be an admitted.
Yeah, but we do have a psak in the Rambam.
The Rambam is
Right. So that's what I'm saying.
much later.
Yeah, no. Yeah, but that's the idea. If you don't have something that's really beferish in the Gemara or in the Poskim, the Poskim we're talking about is the earlier Poskim, like the Rambam, then we follow the Zohar. We follow the Rambam. We follow not only the Rambam, we follow everybody else who basically follow the Rambam. The Mechaber passes like the Rambam, but the Mechaber not only passes like the Rambam, he passes like Rashi too. In other words, he's concerned about both reasons, and that is why he says, if you still have meat after the 6 hours, and even if you chew for a baby, you have to wait. So he's basically concerned about both ta'amim, right, both reasons. So I don't know if I did it last time, I'll read the Ramah real quickly inside. If you found meat right after the 6 hours, between the teeth, masiro, and you remove it, you should rinse your mouth before you eat cheese. Okay, he quotes the Ran. Some say, that's the other opinion, that you don't have to wait 6 hours. As soon as you finished the meal, you benched. That's an important condition. You benched. You're allowed to, through kinuach and hadocha, by rinsing your mouth and by washing your hands, you're allowed to eat dairy. So you don't have to wait 6 hours according to this opinion. Who is that? He quotes the Toises, which we explained, the Mordechai, Hagos Ashri, Hagos Maimonides, and so forth. The minhag hapashut b'midinot elu, in his countries, the minhag was, for at least a while, lehamtin achar achilat basar sha'ah achad, just to wait 1 hour. Then they would have cheese, pizza, whatever. Meal. He's emphasizes and reminding us that it's not enough 1 hour. You have to have benched and finished the meal. Achar basar. Because after you bench, it's considered have kisuda acheres, it's like another meal. The mutar lechol divrei mekilim, because according to the more lenient opinion, after the meal is done, you could have dairy. Ava below birkas hamazon, I'm not going to be lenient. He says, without benching, lo mehanem ton shor, it's not enough to wait 1 hour. Vein chilo kimhim tinasho kodim birkas hamazon. It doesn't make a difference if you waited an hour before benching. Let's say you took your time. You only benched later. O achakach. This is an important point, because there's a machlokes in the poskim of when we wait the 6 hours. Do we wait the 6 hours after we finish eating meat, or after we finish benching? You would have had dessert for an hour. My daughter always asks me, "What's the Shabbos? Abba, are we Melichiks already?" In other words,
can you repeat that?
Well, no, dairy or whatever. What's a Shabbat? Especially during the winter when the hours are short. So the calculation that we do is after we finish the cholent, not after we finish dessert, not after we finish benching. You can calculate it after you finish the meat. If you know the time approximately, that's it. That's how we hold. Some hold from the benching. We hold.
So
most of us hold.
And who's...
Yeah, I'll see if I. Yeah, I'll see. I'll look at it in a moment. I don't know if I actually wrote down the person's name. I just remember.
When you say some hold, you mean that actually do?
No. I'm sorry. There are opinions who hold that you should wait from the benching. But I believe that the vast majority hold that it's okay to go simply by the time you finish eating it.
And apparently that's how we pass.
That's how we pass it. Yeah.
Do we count full 6 hours or 6 hours?
What's that? The what?
When we full 6 hours, or is it just already if we pass the 5th hour and half hours we're already in?
No, we wait 6. We're not lenient to wait 5.5.
Only at brisk. But then you have to follow all their chumras also.
Yeah. Yes. No, we wait 6. We're not lenient on 6. 6 is 6. Yeah. There are situations, and we're going to get into that. Well, since we already mentioned that, what happens if somebody is choile? So we said he has who to rely on. He can wait. What about a child? A child that needs to have dairy products. Do we make him? Do we force him to wait? No. A child that is 6, 7 years old and basically has his meals more often, he doesn't have to wait 6 hours. It's okay for him to wait at least an hour, and he can have his milk afterwards. Once he gets closer to chinuch age, however, 9 years old, right? We expect him to understand that it's important for him to wait. If he can't, he can't. If there's a reason why he can't. there's nothing else to eat. That's all there is to eat. And you don't have to be makbid before bar mitzvah. An infant, you don't even have to wait an hour. An infant that needs to have his milk, right? As soon as he had his meat in his grinder or whatever, obviously he's not chewing a whole piece of meat. He can have the milk almost immediately as long as his mouth is clean. So it all depends. That's how the poskim pretty much divided up: infant, child, chinuch age. How much do you have to wait? But there's no question about it that if a person is a choile, it's like a child. That his needs are, that he needs to have it. It's okay to have it. We have on who to rely on. Enough, at least the 1 hour, if it's possible to wait. That's enough. But for us, healthy people, there's no kula. Oh, but I have to have ice cream now. No, gotta wait a few more minutes. Just titapek, as we say in Hebrew.
Mocha mix rice. It's good ice cream you can have.
Yeah, well, it's not the same.
The cuties are delicious.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Ramah adds that. So it makes no difference if you waited an hour before benching or afterwards. But if after the hour, which he holds, the hour, you still find meat, obviously you have to remove it, you have to clean it, you have to clean yourself up. Some say do not bench so you could right away eat cheese. We're not necessarily particular about this. And some, of course, are medakdek to wait 6 hours after basar legvina. V'chein nachon la'asot. That's how he finished his commentary on the Mechaber. That is the proper thing to do, is to just wait 6 hours. And that's how we follow. V'chein nachon la'asot. And I told you, I read to you, I think the Marshal. The Shach brings the Marshal. The ken ra'ui la'asot lekol mi sheyesh bo reach Torah. Very interesting expression. Whoever really wants to do things properly, in the Torah way, that's what he should do.
6 hours.
Wait 6 hours. All right. Let's say you're in a situation where you're in doubt whether 6 hours went by. When did I finish? I don't remember. Is it 5 hours or is it really 6 hours? Maybe it's already 6.5. What do you do? So someone will say, well, it's a suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. No, this is not a real suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. Why? Because it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin. You're in doubt? Wait another half an hour to be sure. You could wait. So if you could wait, you don't just say suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. What's the big deal? Come on. Wait. But some actually want to say that if it's pretty close and you really have a reasonable doubt, it's a sfek sveika. Remember sfek sveika from Hilchos Taaruvot? This is a good sfek sveika. Safek, maybe the halacha is like Rabbeinu Tam. You don't really need anything. And even if the halacha is that you have to wait, maybe 6 hours went by indeed.
And how does this work?
Right?
The sfek has to be shayla?
Same thing. Misapech.
It doesn't,
It's misapech, sure. You look at it the other way around. Maybe 6 hours did go by, and even if you want to claim 6 hours haven't gone by, maybe the halacha is like Rabbeinu Tam anyway. You don't really have to wait that long. So, we're machmer anyway. We don't go by the sfek sveika. It's a davar sheyesh lo matim. You just wait until you have no doubt that 6 hours went by. Another question that actually comes up quite often is you're in the kitchen and you see this wonderful, delicious-looking cheesecake that your wife just made, or that you made, and you want to taste it, and you start making a bracha, mezonos or shahakol, or whatever it is. Oh no, it's not 6 hours yet, but you made a bracha. What now? So our Rav Wozner Shlita, who wrote a whole bunch of Shalos and Chuvas in this famous Sefer Shevet HaLevi, I believe that's where he writes, says, just forget the bracha and wait. You gotta wait, that's the halacha. There's no way around it, that's the halacha, you gotta wait. There are other poskim who say, no, especially in the winter, if 4 hours went by, just swallow a little bit so it shouldn't be a bracha levatala. Because you can be soymech on the prach. The Pri Chodesh is the one that brings the sheet of the 4 hours. Some say you can even taste a little bit of it after 1 hour, because after all, that's the Ramah. The Ramah is that the world, at least in his part of the world, that's all they waited. That's all they required. By the way, if you do wait 1 hour, the Taz brings down, and that's based on what the Ramah says also, that you do need kinuach v'adocha. You have to rinse your mouth regardless. And you have to bench. You can't just eat in the same meal. So on Shavuos, when we have cheesecake before our meat, before the chicken or whatever, we have it before. We rinse our mouth anyway. If you were to have it afterward, you wouldn't be able to. You would have to wait till after benching. In other words, benching and washing, rinsing the mouth would be very important. Even if you were to hold, the 1 hour is sufficient, you would have to do that. The Ramah and the Taz say. The Shach, I believe, holds, if I understood it right, that if there's no meat whatsoever, you would be able to have the cheese right away without hadoch and kinuach. Chochmas Adam also holds like that. And this is a very interesting point, because if you had a glass of milk, we will see soon, it would be different than if you had cheese. You're about to have meat. It would be different if you had a glass of milk versus you had cheese. We will see. So here, if you do hold by waiting only 1 hour, at least rinse your mouth and make sure that you don't have the cheese in the same meal. You have to have benched. Okay.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
That if you have milk cannot apply?
If you what?
If you have cheese.
Right. No, now we're going to talk. That's the next thing. That's a separate halacha. Well, what we've done so far is discuss meat. How long do you have to wait before you have milk? So obviously we do have to be concerned about the tam. We have to be concerned about Basar ben Hashinaim. That's what the Mechaber holds. We're makpid like the two Shitas, Rashi and the Rambam. But even if you want to sometimes be lenient, like a person is sick, or you're going to wait 1 hour, like the Shitas who wait 1 hour because that's the way you hold, you do want to rinse your mouth. That's how the Taz and the Ramah basically say that would be the very least requirement after you've benched. Now, benching means, of course, that you've eaten bread. If you haven't eaten bread, it means bracha chorina. For what reason? For it to be considered another seudah, which is basically what the Gemara speaks about, not in the same seudah, or especially according to the Zohar. Kabbalah, which says not to have it at the approximately same time, give or take an hour or so.
If from mouth,
Right.
from the flesh,
Okay.
and right over the flesh.
He's going the other way around.
No, yeah, but we haven't done that yet. We're going to learn that.
On Shavuos Quran.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do now. That's what we're going to do. So that's pretty much, we've covered the din of eating dairy after meat, right? The various harchakas. The main idea, of course, behind it is not to come to eat them together. So we're going to have some harchaka. Besides the reasons of Rashi and the Rambam, that there's still something left in the mouth, the basar ben hashinaim, after a couple hours it's all gone. Or like Rabbi Elyahu Kin is saying, basically, the next meal you can really have, and there's no real isser, but at the very least, make sure your mouth is rinsed. I mean, you don't want, definitely everybody agrees that you don't want to have stuff in the mouth. Next sieve. All right, what happens in ochal gvina if you ate cheese? If you ate cheese, mutar lechol acharav basar miyad. You can eat right away meat. Bilvad, as long as sheyayin yadov shelo yeshum dover me'agvina nidbak b'hem, as long as you check your hands that there's no cheese left stuck to them. Bibu balayla, and if it's at night, sheno yochol la'ayin or something that you cannot check your hands, examine them very well. Tzarich lerochtzam, you have to wash them. But tzarich lekaneach pi, rinse your mouth, le'adicho, clean it. Lekaneach u'le'adicho means to clean it and to rinse it. What's the difference? Kinuach, what is kinuach? Kinuach means sheyil'os pat, chew on some bread, eat a cookie. V'kaneach b'piv yafev, make sure your mouth is clean. V'chem b'chol dover sheyirtzeh. You can clean it with anything else too. You can have I don't know, some other crackers or whatever it is. Chutz mikimcha, v'tamri, v'yarka. There are some ingredients that, like flour and dates and vegetables, they may get stuck to the gums. They don't clean well. They don't remove any leftovers in the mouth. And after you've done that, either have some schnapps, like we do on Shabbos, after we've eaten fish. Same idea. Here, rinse your mouth with water. And by the way, when it says rinse, you don't really have to swallow. Rinse it with water or with wine, but midvar mamurim bebosabim avachaya. This is especially said when you're about to eat, meat of an animal. If you want to have chicken after cheese, you don't really have to wash your hands and you don't have to rinse your mouth. The Ramah, some have a chumrah, and this is very interesting. Here's the Ramah, who was lenient in having cheese after meat, I mean, in his original opinion, of only 1 hour. Here he says, "V'yesh machmirin afilu bebasar achar gvina." Even if you're going to have meat after cheese, not to have it right away, but to wait. V'chein noagin, that's his minig. Shekol she'agvina kosha, that's of course only if the cheese is hard. Ein oichlin acharei afilu basar off, not even chicken. In the same way, kimo begvina achar basar, just like we don't eat cheese after meat, we don't eat meat after hard cheese. V'yesh makilin, some are lenient. Ve'in limchois, we can't protest against them as long as rak sheyasu kinuah v'adocha, they should rinse their mouth well, netilas yadayim, and wash their hands. Miuhu tov lehachmer. It's a good idea to be machmer. Now look at the Shach is very interesting here. The Shach again brings down a marshal about this Ramah. Be strict and don't have your meat after your pizza. So he brings down a marshal sham korot tagar. He criticizes in the harshest words ala machmirim. Shehu kemo minus, it's like apikorsos. Where do you take this chumrah from? The only source that you have to be machmir is the Maram, he says. And why was the Maram strict? He was strict for himself. He realized he was about to eat meat and he realized that he had leftover cheese in his mouth. So hichmir, aval mi shelo bo lo yodo takola, whoever does not have these kind of problems, lo yochol lehachmir. Well, why should he be machmir? Why make up chumras? So he says she'in dvorav muchrochim. He wants to say that b'divrei maram mashma ifcha, that you should, because of that, you should be machmir. The Taz, what does the Ramah mean? But yesh machmir, pish lahamtin sheish shais. The Ramah didn't tell us how long to wait, but he actually meant to wait 6 hours. That's the way the Taz learns. But he did say gvina kosher at least. So what's the shiur of a gvina kosher? 6 months have gone by the process of making in this particular cheese. Swiss cheese. Or metulat, or that it has, how do you call it in English? Mold. Mold? No. Yeah. Green stuff? Mold. Yeah? Yeah. Kenkos of Isa Veheter. Okay, without going through the whole Taz, what's going on over here? We do know from the Gemara that Basar after Gvina is less of a problem. If you want to have meat after cheese, learn Gemara, there doesn't appear to be as much of an issue like there is with Gvina after Basar. Even in the same meal. And that's the Mechaber. The Mechaber says very clearly, just wash your hands, rinse your mouth, that's all he requires. And that's because Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai discuss, which one should you do. And the poskim learn that we need both, hadoch and kinuach. And that's what the Gemara means, by the way, the Netila, they're talking about maimim tsoim. This is a concept that you may not have heard of too much. You don't see it too much day-to-day halacha. You know about Netilas maim rishonim, to eat bread. And you know about maim achronim, that you've heard. But maimim tsoim, middle waters, in the middle of the meal, you wash. Whoever washes in the middle of the meal. So it is a chumrah. It's not a requirement. It is a chumrah, but it is a good thing to do if you've eaten fish with your hands. If you ate the fish with your hands, you should go ahead and wash and rinse your hands. Besides rinsing them out, which we do on Shabbos, we have schnapps after fish. We eat some challah after the fish. That's the reason for it. Intentionally, we do it. So you should not have the meat and the fish together at the same time.
Hands after the fish?
If you handled it, yeah. If it's very greasy fish, yeah. The question comes up as to this netila in kinuach and adocha that the Mechaber is mentioning, would it apply to if you ate the cheese with a fork? Well, the kinuach and the hadocha in the mouth has nothing to do with the fork, but would I need a netilas yadai? So some say no. if you've actually eaten it with a fork, you wouldn't need netilas yadayim. But if you handled cheese with your hand, in the same way if you handle fish with your hand, you should wash your hands.
When you with the bracha.
Oh, okay, good question. When we say mayim tzoim have the same halachic status as mayim achroinim, which three things, basically. You don't have to worry about chatzitza, but mayim achroinim. You don't need a keli. You can put your hands underneath the berez. And number three, you don't have to wash your entire hand until your joints. First, a little bit of your fingers. Not even, you don't have to do the whole hand. These are the basic three things that are different between mayim rishonim and mayim achronim. So the mayim emtsoim, halacha of mayim emtsoim would be pretty much the same like mayim achronim. So obviously there's no bracha now. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to look up, and this was written,
Europeans. It's a European custom that started off not too long ago.
After which is in the 15th.
To be exact, I don't remember right now the time when they started using it, but I think approximately at that time.
So
maybe a little bit after that. Yeah, he doesn't talk about mazleg here. No, it's the poskim who talk about this issue. Anyway, so based on the mechaber, there's no problem. Remember, basar after gvina, that's the halacha, really. That for the most part, you can have, even within the same meal, you can have meat after cheese. As long as you rinse your mouth, wash your hands. And make sure that the mouth is clean of any remnants of cheese. The Ramah is the one that brought various shitas here that are machmer and basar after gvina, just like with gvina after basar. And as I told you, it's also brought down in Darkei Moshe with what happened with the Maharam, that he found some cheese between his teeth, and he, of course, made his own chumrah on himself not to eat right away meat after cheese. Now,
Long time. Personal fork was most likely invented in the empire.
no, but the question, Ilan, was not just the forks. It was spoons, knife, and fork. It was the whole cutlery set. Because fork in itself, you always had a need to grab things with some sort of a tool.
Well, but before the fork was introduced, West were reliant on the spoon as the only eating use.
Westerners.
Yes, so spoon and knife predated forks.
Knives, of course, did.
Well, spoons and knives predated, as forks came already into common use.
Forks.
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 Personal forks.
In other words, to use the entire set of cutlery at a table, you're saying existed already from...
But I doubt it existed in most of them.
Exactly, it depends on which country.
We're talking about West.
Yeah.
Eastern Europe.
The Spartan one is today, I think.
Records show that by the 9th century, a similar utensil was in limited use in Persia within the elite circles. By the 10th century, the table fork was in common as now the Middle East and Turkey.
The what century?
10th.
10th. Okay. Yeah. So during the time of the Beis Hamikdash, the second one, it was not so much in use.
Not as a personal utensil. It wasn't used in the temple. But
If you see how the Yemenites eat and how the Bukharans used to eat, they used to take a lafa, piece of soft bread, and just grab the rice and in the pot and just no fork. How would they eat the yogurt? They probably would drink it, right? I'm assuming, or they would dip some food into it. So I think it spread slowly, and Europe was the first one, where it was adapted. It was definitely not adapted in the Middle East for a while. Anyway, the Gra is the one that brings down what I said before, the Zohar, about having meat and dairy in the same meal. It was the problem of having them in the same meal. So I'm not sure if it didn't look like it made a difference of the order. It's just not having them in the same meal made it was a problem. Anyway, the point of the Ramah is as follows: that anybody who was machmer on the hard cheese, not the soft cheese. Now, what's soft cheese? When we spoke about making cheese, I think we discussed the fact that the soft cheese is things like cottage cheese, ricotta cheese, cheese that's made from the whey, as opposed to hard cheese, which has a longer process. Hard cheese, especially the one that is aged, what happens because of the aging and because of the various cultures it becomes harif, it becomes sharper, it does become harder, it just becomes, just heavier. And the poskim explained that kind of cheese does present the same problem as meat. It emits a shuman, a kind of fattiness in the mouth for a while, and the pieces tend to stick or remain in the mouth longer. So the question is, okay, if that's the case, what if I melt that cheese? And then it hardened a little. Some say that the melting of the cheese does away with the hardness, even if it's solidified later. So the question was raised to poskim in this generation, one after another. Rabbi Elyahu was asked, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was asked, the Chazon Ish was asked. A lot of the poskim were asked about pizza and things like that. The question came up with yellow cheese, American yellow cheese. Some called American yellow cheese hard cheese. Then not everybody considers it. I think that even though some people are machmir, we're not machmir. The Chazon Ish was asked, I think, by Rav Chaim Kanievsky himself, and the Chazon Ish said yellow cheese is not considered hard. Hard cheese is cheese that was aged. That's hard cheese. From what we see in the Judaic, some say it was aged for 12 months, some say it was aged for 6 months. The Ben Ish Chai is very interesting. The Ben Ish Chai says you wait 1 hour per month of aging. I think he's the only. There may be others who say the same like him. You wait 1 hour per month of aging. In other words, if it's truly hard cheese that was aged for several months, at least 6 months, you would wait 6 hours to eat. Just in the same way you wait 6 hours to have your dairy after your meat. Hard cheese, which most of us do not eat on a regular basis, what we eat is considered soft cheese. The minimum requirement would be to just rinse your mouth and you could have the meat almost immediately.
To say several times
Yeah.
that we don't, in our diet, that's what we're talking about.
All I know is that we
Is it
follow
even what is it? It's chopped up.
the Swiss. No, but
Parmesan.
the world today follows basically that sheet, the Chazon Ish and all those places who hold that at the very least we are machmir on cheese that has been aged. The cheese that has been aged to be considered hard cheese for waiting. The question is how much to wait. How much you have to wait? So some basically take the middle approach of waiting only 1 hour. And that's what really a lot of people do. If there's a suffix, if the cheese they ate was a hard kind of cheese, we wait 1 hour. And we rinse our mouth. Some are machmir like the Chazon Ish, if it's really aged based on 6 months or more, to wait a full 6 hours. But most people don't eat that kind of cheese, not in our circles. But it's possible that some of the cheeses we eat may be considered a hard cheese too. So if you have any doubt, you wait 1 hour. And that's what I tell people to do. That if you've had a hard cheese, a real hard cheese that you suspect was a hard cheese you've had, wait at least an hour before you have your meat. And make sure your mouth is rinsed. Yeah, exactly. 1 hour, it's not a problem. Don't have it right away. But if you've had regular cheese, yellow cheese, slices, cottage cheese for sure, you don't have to wait anything. Just rinse your mouth. Shavuos, the Zohar is only in the same meal. Not everybody really follows the Zohar as far as having it within 1 hour. But you're right, that's a very good point. If you want to follow the Zohar, you should not have any cheese with meat in the same hour. The question that, of course, that arises is Shavuos. What do we do Shavuos? Shavuos, many people have their cheesecake, and then they're going to have the regular meat. By the way, you're supposed to have meat on Yom Tov. People who have a dairy meal are doing the wrong thing. Even if it's the second days, I don't care. Now, if you can't have meat for some reason, that's different. But if you can, you should have fish and meat in every Yom Tov meal, just like in every Shabbos meal. Well, Shabbos, you don't have to have it for Shalosh Shudas. Friday and day, night and day. Now, let's say, on the second day of Yom Tov, you've had your meat at night. Now, during this second day on the day, it's just too much. You can't have. You want to have parv. You want to have fish. You have to have fish. You want to have fish. You have to have Yom Tov meal. You can't just have lasagnas and all these things and get away with it. You have to have a good Yom Tov meal. Then you may be able to get away with it. But if you really want to be mehader, you should have meat in every meal, or chicken in every meal.
On Yom Tov.
On Yom Tov, sure. Some places hold that on Shabbos it's actually a mitzvah to have meat. So even though you may be yoitze without on Shavuos, and like some say, to be lenient, if you had it at least at night, you have it on the second day, we should be makbid. So therefore, how do you have the cheesecake? You have it before. How do you have it before and comply with the Zohar? You have it before you wash your hands. You have it after Kiddush. So you made Kiddush, you sit down, you have cheesecake, you rinse your mouth, of course, and by the time you get to the meat, it's going to be half an hour or more anyway. You're not going to have your meat right away. It should be okay.
We'll come back to a separate meal. Do
Yes.
you need to do that?
You don't have to do that, but that's only if you've had a hard cheese. If you've had some melted cheese, a lot of cheesecakes are made from sour cream. It's not a big deal. But if you've had a farmer's cheese, it's also not a big deal. But if you've had a hard cheese, I would wait an hour. Definitely. Yeah. After a hard cheese, I would wait at least unless you have the aged cheeses. Then some say that you should wait 6 hours. But most cheeses are not hard, the one we have. And as long as we rinse our mouth and we wash our hands, we're okay. So anyway, regarding washing our hands, that's what the Gemara calls Maim and Tzoim, that we said before, and that's because we don't want to have any remnants left on our hands. And as far as the kinuach ve'hadocha in the mouth, that's because we don't want to have pieces left in the mouth. For the same reason, we don't want to have meat in the mouth. So the Pri Chodesh is the one that brings the question of what happens if you ate with a fork. And he says you don't have to wash your hands. Pri Mikvaot says you should be machmer because it's not a big deal to wash your hands. What's the big deal? Just wash your hands. There's an interesting question that Mishnah Berurah speaks about, by the way. When you want to use maim and tzoim or maim achronim, can you have other liquids?
Water.
You have Coke, you have orange juice, other than water. Water is the best. Some say don't use any other liquids other than water because other liquids will tend to be fatty themselves and will not tend to cleanse you of the fat on your hands as well as water does. So you should only use lechatchila water. Marshal is makel to use any liquids. One should be machmer.
I mean, it's worthwhile water with a little bit of lemon juice.
Well, obviously you want to use. If you do have a lot of grease, you want to use soap. Yeah, sure. Anyway, Pri Megadim brings down that if you had soft cheese, it's enough to bench. In other words, you don't have to wait an hour. He also holds only if you had hard cheese. Do you have to be machmer 6 hours? Yeah. Magen Avraham, Mishnah Berurah, I think you also say after soft cheese for sure not a problem. You don't even have to wait. All right, let's see here. Just to finish up over here, the kinuach and the hadocha that we spoke about in the mechaber are important to remove the crumbs, any crumbs that's left over of gvina in the mouth, or the tam gvina, as we said, that one of the explanations there may still be tam. So the cleansing with the bread, or in the rinsing, or the drinking with the liquid, takes care of that. And according to Rashi and the Tosfos and the Rif, it's mashal that you need both. You need the hadocha and the kinuach. The Rambam somehow I don't think says that you need hadocha of the mouth. He just says make sure it's clean. And you removed all the bits and pieces there. But we're machmer regardless of whether you're going to have chicken or meat. We're machmer to wash our hands if they're dirty and to be mekaneach the mouth and to rinse it. However, if you had a glass of milk, just a glass of milk, then you don't have to wash your hands, obviously. A glass of milk, you just rinse your mouth, and that's fine. So if you're going to be having meat almost right after the dairy product that is not a problem of hard cheese, at the very least, one should rinse off, because it could be that there's something left over. It's very easy for something to be left over.
And rinsing things.
Yeah, schnapps or drink or water or eating something in between the two. Now, the Taz appears to be machmir over here that even if you wait an hour after the cheese, you should still wash and rinse. The Shach seems to be more makel apparently. He says that if you've waited your hour, you don't have to do all the rinsing. Yeah, that's the only difference that I think I noticed here between the Taz and the Shach. But anyway, this is the din between having cheese after meat or meat after cheese. Next time, B'ezrat Hashem, we come together, we're going to be talking about a tafshil shel basar or tafshil shel cholov. A tafshil, of course, has to do with a food item that was cooked with meat, but does not have meat on it. Obviously, otherwise it would be like meat. It has absorbed the flavor of the meat. It's fleshy, therefore. What are the various dinim that apply in that kind of a scenario?